Hi guys, today we're going to be doing the fork seals on the Mito on both of the fork legs. We'll be starting with the left leg for a couple of reasons. One, simply because it's closer to me at the moment and a little easier to get to. It's also the slightly cleaner one of the two. I've given that a quick wipe over, so this one's obviously not weeping quite as badly. But the main reason is because apparently, according to the owner's manual, the left leg contains the rebound damping, the right leg contains the compression damping, and in the right leg they both use cartridge internals in these upside down forks, and in the left leg you can check the oil level after refilling, in the right leg you can't. So what this will enable me to do is put in the specified oil level, check the level with the vernier calipers, and that will make sure that I can get the same amount of oil in the other fork leg to match them up. What you need to do first of all is slacken off the nut on the top of the fork leg. So using a big wrench, and you're literally just slackening that off enough so that you can undo that once the fork leg is out. Next you have 3 cap bolts. You have 1 in the top yoke, you have 2 in the bottom yoke. The yokes, the stanchions, the chrome part down here in the upside down forks, or the chrome part up here in the right way up forks, and then the fork leg is the outer bit that the oil and internals fit into. So, using an Allen key, we slacken off these cap bolts, which will then allow you, with a slight twisting motion, to wiggle the fork leg out of your triple clamps, like so. Just ignore the cat dishes there, please. So we have the fork leg on a clean bench area, like so. We will need a jug, which I have sitting conveniently here, ready to catch the fork oil once we drain that out. Now, normally, I'm going to be working through the manual for this fork leg, and apparently it's quite an easy and straightforward change, which differs slightly from fork legs that I've done in the past. Now, usually what you would do at this point is use a screwdriver, preferably one with a slightly blunted tip. It's handy to keep one spare for this purpose, and you lever away the dust seal bit by bit until that comes free. What you want to make sure you avoid doing is slipping and scoring your fork stanchion, because that will give you problems, and it will cause your new seal to leak very quickly. What you would then normally do is you have a snap ring inside here, which you can flick out with a small screwdriver. However, the snap ring inside this one is somewhat different, and is removed along with the seal after removal of the fork leg. Because you don't remove this one like the usual ones where you use the slide hammer technique and it takes the whole bushings and everything else out in one go. It's a bit of an odd one. You don't actually undo the cap bolt at the bottom that holds the cartridge assembly. So the next step is to undo the cap, which is loose. Now this, on an upside down fork, incidentally, these are generally not under compression. However, you can usually feel, as you're undoing it, you can feel if there's something there giving it a bit of pressure behind. You can see with that one that's quite loose once it's past the O-ring. So with this not being under compression, you can just safely unscrew it, but it's always probably a good idea to, if you're not sure for the first time you do it, just keep your hand over, and then that way, if it does pop off, it's not going to take you by surprise and fly up and hit you in the face or something. So we take the cap off. You'll see the push rod, which bears on the top cap in there, and a collar with a split ring or collet type assembly which holds everything in place. Now you can simply lower down the fork leg. I'll do this carefully because obviously with it being laid on its side you can see the oil pooling there, until the cap drops down, and then it's just a case of pulling off these 2 collets like so. Pop them on a piece of clean towel. You can then pull out this spacer like so. It just lifts away, and then inside there, if you can see, let's try and lower this down a little so you can see that. you can actually, oops, there you go. Now you can see there inside the cartridge assembly. What we need to do next is drain the oil, and this is going to be drained into a measuring jug that I use for things like this. So you essentially upend the fork like so, and that's actually pretty clean, the stuff that's coming out of there. So this was obviously not this obviously hasn't been leaking for very long, this particular one. I suspect the other leg, once I get around to that, is going to be much, much dirtier. So yes, essentially you upend this, drain the oil there, and now according to the book specifications, the fork leg, to replenish it, will take somewhere in the region of 420 cc or 420 millilitres. As you can see, so far what we've got out of there is about 200. So that to drain a bit. And what I'm going to do just now is prop that up in the corner there and just leave that to drain freely for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes or so, and then we'll come back to that and continue stripping the forks. Okay, so we've come back after the fork leg's drained, and that's pretty much as we're going to get out of it at the moment. There's still a little bit more in there, but what I'm going to do now is put this down on the floor, so hopefully I can kind of show you where we're going with this now. So we take the fork leg, which is currently upside down, and simply pull them apart like so. You see the whole assembly with the push rod slides straight out of there, and there is actually a slight taper or curve at the top, which is helpful for reinsertion past the new fork seal once that goes in. So we'll just take these bits and lay them down here like so. Okay, so we've got the fork stripped apart, as you see there. It really was just as simple as sliding one out of the other. There's no fitted bush, which what you normally get with a traditional fork leg. This one, incidentally, is a Marzocchi, I believe. 40mm upside down Marzocchi. What you normally get with a fork leg on the stanchion, you usually get a bush up here, and then you usually get another bush which sits there, which is free running. So the one here is clipped into place, and that creates a low stiction surface to slide it in and out of your fork leg. And then this one here is free moving, that fits into place on your fork leg and creates a low stiction surface for the whole fork leg assembly to move up and down. And in this case, all you've got is one long smooth fork leg, one long smooth stanchion rather, and inside the fork leg you can see approximately a sort of a third of the way down, looking from the top where the cap fits, you can see a bush fitted inside there. I don't know how easy that would be to remove if you needed to replace it, but it all looks good in there anyway, so I'm not going to bother with that. So as I said before, you don't need to undo the cap bolt at the bottom, because what that does is it just removes this leg, and then revealing this, which is the whole piston assembly rather than a separate internal assembly. So what we need to do next is have a quick check and clean of all the components. The scraper ring for example, because they tend to get gunge and rubbish and muck and what have you trapped inside. So have a check, make sure there are no splits or creases around the edge here, because if there are, it won't do its job, which is to keep dust and dirt and grit and such out. Make sure it's not perished, make sure it's still got some flexibility in the lips there, and so that you know it will seal against the dust and grit. Check your spacer washer just for wear and tear, make sure it's okay and clean and there's no unsightly burrs or anything, and likewise your little clamps here, just to make sure that there are no nasty ridges or anything like that on there where it can stick. You'll have your new fork seal to go in, and then we need to remove the clip and the old fork seal from the fork leg. Now the clip is more of a circlip kind of design, and I suspect it's going to be a little bit more fiddly. Well, I suspect it's going to be a lot more fiddly to remove than the standard wire shaped spring clip that you might be familiar with if you've changed other fork legs. So we need to remove that and the seal, and then just give the inside of the fork tube a bit of a clean and make sure there's nothing stuck to that, no nasties in there. And then the next thing to do is to check the surface of the stanchion. Now we've got a small amount of pitting low down on this one, which is directly in line for the stone chips and everything off the road. So it's quite common to get little bits and pieces. This will dress up with some fine wet and dry. Probably use some 600 grit wet and dry, lubricated with WD-40. Give the whole fork leg, basically it's just going to be a case of wrapping it around, give the whole fork leg a swipe round with that, dress that down so it's all nice and smooth, and then that way you've not got any little ridges that are going to tear up your nice new fork seal. And then give that, once that's done, that's going to be wiped over to make sure it's removed any sign of the sanding grit. So we'll move on with that, and then we'll get to rebuilding the fork.